Welcome to MagicGatheringStrat, Eternalgameplayer. Going to redo my intro video. The garbage was, excuse me, the audio was garbage on my last video for my intro, so I'm going to redo it. In that last video, I went over the decks I typically play in Modern, so I'm going to do that again. Hopefully the audio is better. I did get a new mic. I got a blue snowball. It seems that these snowballs do pick up a lot of background noise, even though I have it set to, I don't remember what it's called, but basically only front-facing sound capture. But it still picks up my fans from my computer, so that's what that slight white noise is in the background. And I'm working on something to fix that as well. In Modern, I like to play 2 serious decks and 3 kind of just for fun decks. My first serious deck that I play in the tournament practice room a lot is Stompy, and this is my Stompy deck. It's pretty basic. It has changed since the first video, so if you did watch the first video, you'll notice a few changes. I run 2 Dismembers main board and 2 Collected Companies. I like Collected Company a lot. It helps, especially if you get your board wiped. It's very good synergy when you run things like Experiment 1 and Avatar. It'll definitely evolve creatures. It'll put more 1/1 counters on creatures, so when you play an Avatar, or if you already have 1/1 creatures in the field and you play an Avatar with Collected Company, it's just a lot of value. And also Collected Company lets you push creatures down on their turn, which is also, you do some tricks with that. I run 20 lands, and I put Rancor back in, 2 Rancors, but I use them very carefully, I guess. I mean, who doesn't? You don't want to get 2 for 1, but I definitely will sideboard them out during like burn and stuff. It's just too easy to get 2v1 with them. And actually I don't run a lot of pump. I just run Vines of Acid, Rancor, and the Aspect of Hydra. Everything else is just putting creatures on the board. I do use Prey Upon for some creature removal, and 2 Scavenging Oozes to get stuff out of the graveyard. Works exceptionally well versus Snapcaster, Dredge, or Living End, I believe the deck's called. In the sideboard, I run Hunt the Hunter for any other Tomoglyphs. Actually, it deals with Tomoglyph really well. Any other green running creatures. Siege Rhino, I've used it against Siege Rhino. I run 1 Gleeful Sabotage just to get rid of some artifacts or enchantments, and I like to Conspire. And then I run 2 Unraveling Ethers for your Worm Coil style artifacts, or just indestructible artifacts. And then I run Choke for fighting islands. And then your Kitchen Finks works against any kind of burn or anything that you just want to, persist. Persist is a good mechanic for removal decks as well as burn decks. I run 2 Pithy Needles because it shuts down a wide variety of things. Notably, I like running it right now because Ether Vial, you see a lot of it, whether it be the new Goblin decks that are coming up because of Origins, or the Fairy decks, or I think of even fighting a White Weenie deck that tried to use Ether Vial. It shuts it down. It shuts down Planeswalkers. It's just kind of a catch-22 card. And then Spell Skites. It just kind of can save you. If they play a Spell Kite and you use a Rancor and you have 1 out, you can kind of save your Rancor. It's just there if we need it. I almost always bring in the enchantment removal and Hunt the Hunter with this current meta, and then Kitchen Finks if it's heavy burn. So that's my Stompy. My other serious deck, which y'all probably know, is Amulet Bloom. I make a lot of videos on this. This has definitely changed since the first intro video that I've done. I used to run 4 copies of Ancient Stirrings, and I have completely removed those and added Sleight of Hand, so my cantrips are all blue now. Because of that, I removed the Worm Coil engine, because I used to run one main deck Worm Coil. Ancient Stirrings was good. It was good with Ancient Stirrings because you could find it. Now that I don't have Ancient Stirrings, it seems worse, so I run one Dragon Lord, who helps during control matchups, and even versus Path of Exile on non-control matchups. Because I am running more blue cantrips, I want to hit blue land more. I am playing a Temple of Mystery, which also acts as a cantrip, actually quite well from my testings, because you can put it down, you can Vesuve it if you want to, you can bounce it. There's been times where you can just chain 3 of them, and if you have Amulet out, it comes into play untapped, and most of the time when you do play a bunch of lands, it's because of Summer Bloom or Azusa, so it's not hurting you any, and it sets up your draws really nicely. There's been some times where I've played with Amulet Bloom and I'm against a control matchup and I can't get Cavern of Souls or whatever, or if it's a white matchup that uses a lot of Path of Exiles, which is the #1 thing to get rid of a Titan on the battlefield, and it just leaves me mid to late game with nothing but lands in my hand, lands on the battlefield. It's bad. So I use this, or hopefully I have this to use, but it's there because of that. I'll have plenty of mana to activate it, and I'll use, Slayers and Sunhome if available to beef it up, and get damage through. And the fact that it's flying helps a lot, and it's blue and white, it just fits our cantrips, and the white helps with Slayers and Sunhome. I only run 1 copy of Azusa. I know a lot of your decks run more, like 2. I decided to just run 1. I'd rather run 3 Hive Minds than an extra copy of Azusa. This just seems like a more reliable combo a lot of the times, when you can't have like the amazing hands turn 1 and 2. Sideboard, it's pretty much the same. I am running 2 Pithing Needles in this board as well. Again, I use it to shut down just a wide variety of things. Engineer Explosive I hadn't had to test yet. It's supposed to be really good against Twin, which is our worst matchup. But it's there. I'll test it eventually. Hornet Queen, Thragtusk, Seals, those are all standard. Pyroclasms, I took out a Raining Volley, put in Pyroclasm. Pyroclasm, just all out answer to like Affinity and such. Swan Songs is a generic counter. It actually works for a lot of different things. I've used it against the Living End. Works good against Twin. Even counter decks, I've used it to just push a Titan through. That with your Pact of Negation, usually you can land a Titan. Leyline of Sanctity is for discard and burn. It helps with burn. You don't need it. We're just already so good against burn, but it's there. It's mainly for discard for Thoughtseize, and the other one I can't remember its name. I put Sigarda in the sideboard. I like her a lot. She's actually really good in a control matchup, even though she's mainly been used in the past for Liliana and other Edict effects. A 5/5 flying hexproof is really good in a control matchup, because a lot of the control decks run flyers, or they run Celestial Colonnade, and a lot of the times in the control matchup I'll be beaten down by a Celestial Colonnade, and she beats it. Also, she can't be Path to Exiled, which is huge. Now, board sweepers or wipers would kill her, but those are much rarer than Path to Exile, and you can always plop her down with a Cavern of Souls, and she can't get countered. And then you can always bounce your Cavern of Souls, so you can use it again for your Titan. And that's my Amulet Bloom deck. Now, some of the non-serious, well, they're serious decks, but just for fun, and I don't play them often. Some of these I will play in tournament practice room, but they have a less chance to win with the current meta. The first one's an Eye Candy deck. I call it Eye Candy because of its popper variant, but it's a Teamer Battle Rage double striking prowess deck. You use Kill Fiend, who's your star, then your Monastery Swift Spear, and then your worst of the bunch is a Blister Coil. And you're basically protecting it with Apostle's Blessing, and then you get in for double strike with either Assault Strobe or Teamer Battle Rage. Pump it up and kill them. This is probably as explosive. Sometimes, I would say it's more consistently explosive early game than Amulet Bloom is. Amulet Bloom is really super explosive, and you can have turn 2 wins crazy, but it takes like 4 or 5 cards to do that, whereas Teamer, if you can't get a blocker out, they can kill you turn 2 pretty easily. After turn 2, it kind of gets harder for them. This definitely doesn't have a long or a late game. The Amulet Bloom has a better late game. The sideboards really wasn't... I didn't play this deck too much, so the sideboard really wasn't flushed out. I just have Young Pyromancer and the Crusader in there to switch to kind of a mid-range, I guess, where you can summon tokens and do stuff. And Gutshot, Lightning Bolt if you need more removal. Smash the Smithereens against Affinity and stuff. Another deck that I actually find a lot of enjoyment in is something I call Holy Lands. It's a deck that runs 47 lands, and it can run more, and it can run a bunch of different types of lands, and it's got 2 win conditions. The first win condition is Seismic Assault, and the second win condition is a Zombie Infestation, and they're completely different win conditions. You basically use Treasure Hunt, which draws cards until you hit a non-land card. You put the non-land card and all the lands in your hand. So, like turn 2, you use Treasure Hunt, you can have like 20 cards in hand. And you have your Reliquary Towers to prevent discard. Once you have a bunch of lands in hand, if you have a Seismic Assault, you put it on the battlefield, and now you just have a cannon that shoots 2 damage at whatever you want. I was using Muddle the Mixture there for a while as an 8 set of treasure hunts, basically, just to really find that treasure hunt. And the lands aren't, you don't have to use these type of lands. You can put a bunch of utility lands in here as well. 90% of your lands are going to get discarded anyway. We do run Gemstone Caverns. It's kind of nice. You can put that out on, or before even turn 1. It really gives you an advantage. And then Crumbling Necropolis is just fantastic because it gives you all the colors you need. Most of the time with this deck in turn 2, at least with any tournament style deck, you're going to fight up against the Leyline of Sanctity, and if that happens, you're dead, unless you happen to find Countryside Crusher, which is what I put in my deck. And as it says at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top cards of your library. If it's a land card, put it into your graveyard and repeat this process. Every time a land card goes into your graveyard, put a 1/1 counter on Countryside Crusher. But in such a removal heavy meta, it's not going to last long. It's just kind of a one-of because it's funny. Second game, I will probably board in the Zombie Infestations, which works the same way as Seismic Assault. You're just going to discard 2 land cards and put a 2/2 black zombie creature token into the battlefield. You do that on their turn, and then you can attack with it, and you can attack with 10 2/2 zombies, and it's amazing because they're foil tokens, 2/2 foil token zombies. With that, I'll put the Contested War Zones in there just in case I want to pump them up a little bit. And then the only other side card I really have is an Ivory Crane for burn. because this is the only deck I can think of ever playing Ivory Crane in. Another deck that I like to play is Restore Balance. It's similar to Living End, except you play with border posts. The object is to get a bunch of border posts on the battlefield. You bounce it. You bounce a land back into your hand. Play the border post for 1. Now you have an artifact that gives you two kinds of mana. And then you get a bunch of those, and then you play a Cascade spell, just like Living End, and it hunts for Restore Balance. And then each player chooses a number of lands he or she controls equal to the number of lands controlled by the player who controls the fewest. Then sacrifices the rest. Player sacrifices creatures and discards the same way. So basically, you're not going to have any lands on the battlefield. You're going to have border posts. So they'll have to sacrifice all their lands. Most of the time, they'll sacrifice cards in hand because you're going to have an empty hand, or close to having an empty hand. They might get to keep 1 or 2. And any creatures they have, they'll have to sacrifice. And then there's some other synergy in here, such as a Nihilith and a Greater Gargandon. This one's really nice because whenever a card is put into the graveyard, you take a charge counter on him. So if you put this on suspend, and then you pop a Cascade and do a Restore Balance, this is going to come out on the field. Greater Gargadon, you can sacrifice artifacts, creatures, or lands, so it's kind of in the deck just so you don't Restore Balance yourself while you have lands and creatures on the battlefield. You put him on suspend, and if you do have a land or a creature, you can sacrifice it to Greater Gargadon, remove a suspend counter, and then Restore Balance him to basically nothing, and your Greater Gargadon will most likely be coming out soon. You probably have him on the battlefield, and if neither of that works, your backup plan is March of the Machines, which turns all your border posts into creatures, 3/3s. So it's kind of cool. There's a lot of disruption out there right now for it, so I don't play it often, but it can be competitive in a tournament setting. Sideboard is Fire Spout, Dismember for removal, Ricochet Trap, another Cascade spell. The issue with Demonic Dread is that it needs a target, so if they don't have a creature or you don't have a creature, you can't cast it. The one you want to cast is Violent Outburst. If I remember correctly, that one's an easy one to cast, and the mana is easy to get. Followed by Ardent Plea. And then you have Wismirs because at the time this deck was made, Stony Islands, I want to say, is what it was called. It was a card that just completely killed you. Kind of like Amulet Bloom has Blood Moon that just kind of completely shuts down the deck. This one had a card that did that, and so you could evoke it to remove it. Now, going back to Amulet Bloom, we do have Seals of Primordium and Swan Songs for the Blood Moon, and I'm guessing even Engineered Explosives could help you against that. To be honest, I've only found or encountered 1 Blood Moon in all the times I've played this deck in the past couple weeks, so it's really not that bad right now. And you can still work around Blood Moon. It's just if they hit you early in the game, that's when it hurts the most. With Amulet Bloom, you don't need Amulet of Vigor to actually work this deck. It's just the Amulet of Vigor makes it explosive. If you don't have Amulet of Vigor, you can play Summer Bloom or Azusa, or both, and you can dump so much land on the battlefield. And, turn 4 you can have 6 mana easy with a double the Kuru lands. And you can hardcast Prime Time if it's in your hand already, or you can Summoner's Pact and then find it, and yeah. So you don't need Amulet of Vigor. So if you're fighting an Amulet Bloom deck, don't worry about their Amulet of Vigor too much. If you have an option to counter an Amulet of Vigor or a Summer Bloom, I would go for the Summer Bloom as playing this deck. Summer Bloom and Azusa are your real ramping engines of this deck. Now, that being said, if they don't have an Amulet play. They can't do the attack, or they can't do the play prime time, get the Boros Garrison and get the Slayer Stronghold, and then attack that turn. So it is slower, but it's still there. I mean, they still have the mana power, they still have the creatures, they still have the Hive Mind combo. They can still kill you very easily without Amulet of Vigor. So just a little thought on that. Let's see. Amulet Bloom, Holy Lands, Eye Candy, Restore Balance, and Stompy are my modern decks. Thank you for watching.